How would you like to be a Hollywood actor? How would you like to get paid the big bucks and see your name in stars? It's not something everyone aspires to, but it's certainly a high paying job. If you've ever played the board game, The Game of Life, and you spin the wheel and you get to pick your career, among police officer for the power and the income is celebrity, movie star, actor. 15% of acting roles are filled by foreign born individuals. People from foreign countries who come here, not from America, and fill some of the most desirable jobs in the country. You don't see that in other nations, and in some places it's because they have laws against it. So, why do we see that here? I think it's because studios are trying to manufacture control of what I would call a sound, right? A band back in a day, they would go and they would find the sound. They would go and they'd get a recruiter, and he would go around and he'd listen to various local bands, and he'd say, we've really got an interesting sound here. This will sell. They'd listen to it, they'd break it down mathematically, and they'd decide that this was going to be what they would put money behind. And they would go and they'd find it. And the problem with that was that these bands had ownership over what it was they were producing. And so that's been winnowed away over time by different producers. And you might be familiar with, like, say, Macklemore with his song Thrift Shop. He was an independent artist and made a lot of money off of that. Why have they gone this direction? Well, back in the day, it was artists that forced MTV to have black artists on MTV. They would go on the shows and complain that MTV wouldn't show music by black people, and that they called MTV racist. And it meant that these celebrities had an incredible amount of power. They actually had a bit of a voice, so to speak, when it came to issues within their field and within their what was reasonable for them to speak on. I'm not asking for celebrities to speak on politics, but when it comes to their contracts, that's perfectly fine. When it comes to what's happening in the institutions that they deal with directly and have a unique view into, yeah, actors and musicians, incredibly important what they did speaking out. You don't see that now because the sound is controlled. So like Sabrina Carpenter sold 3 million albums, right? Elvis sold 1 billion. The Beatles sold like 500 million. That obnoxious song by that young man he plays, Benson Boone, Moonbeams and Ice Cream and Dancing at the Movies, which is something you should never do and doesn't make any sense. It does a lot of backflips. He sold 61,000 albums. Now, Phil Labonte, who is on Timcast IRL, and many people might have seen because it's a very popular podcast, he sold 1 million albums. Rebecca Black's Friday outsold Benson Boone's entire discography on iTunes. She outsold just with one song. I think it's 250 million downloads. And so you have lots of because like Dua Lipa, for example, has 30 million albums sold, which is a band that whose favorite band is that? You know, and that's not very scientific of me. I'm not being very rigorous or astute there, but that just, come on. So you have celebrities that are being pushed that come from production pipelines that are actors and musicians that, frankly, nobody asked for. Nobody made famous except for studio executives. And it was a means of control. And they've been able to do this and push a left-wing agenda and a left-wing narrative and further insulate themselves. And because there's not alternatives to this, because there's not a lot of, because of acting guilds, because of the way that contracts are set up, what are we seeing? They don't want to sell you a bucket of popcorn. They're not concerned with getting every person to eat a bucket of popcorn, pay them what they've got in their wallet. They're going out of business because, frankly, this whole thing's untenable. So thank you for coming to my Celebrities and Musicians Are Fake and Foreign Crash Out, and I appreciate your time.